John Parker fixed his tie in the mirror and took a deep breath. Today was his wedding day. At 62 years old, with gray hair and wrinkles around his eyes, he never thought he would get married again. His first wife, Mary, had died 5 years ago from cancer. The years after her death had been very hard and lonely. But then Catherine came into his life. She was 42, 20 years younger than him, with long brown hair and a bright smile. They met at a charity event just 8 months ago. John still remembered how she laughed at his jokes and touched his arm when she talked. Catherine moved quickly into his life and his heart. 3 months after they met, she moved into his big house. 2 months after that, he asked her to marry him. John's son, Michael, had not been happy about this. Michael was 35, married with 2 kids of his own. "Dad, don't you think this is moving too fast?" Michael had asked when John told him about the wedding plans. "You barely know her." John had gotten angry. "I'm not a child, Michael. I know what I'm doing. She's 20 years younger than you, Dad. Don't you find that a bit strange? And why is she in such a hurry to get married?" Their fight had been bad. John told Michael to mind his own business. Michael had stopped calling after that. John had sent him a wedding invitation anyway, but Michael never answered. Now, as John stood in a small room at the back of the church, he felt sad that his only son wouldn't be there on his big day. His best friend Tom knocked on the door. "It's time, John. Everyone is waiting." John nodded and followed Tom out to the front of the church. About 100 people sat in the wooden pews. Friends, family, some business partners, but no Michael. John tried not to think about it as he stood next to the priest, waiting for his bride. The music started. Everyone stood up and turned to look at the church doors. Catherine appeared, wearing a beautiful white dress that hugged her slim body. Her hair was up, with small flowers tucked into it. She looked beautiful, and John felt his heart beat faster. She smiled at him as she slowly walked down the aisle. John couldn't believe his luck. After years of being alone, eating dinner by himself, and watching TV until he fell asleep, he would have a partner again. Someone to talk to travel with, to share his life with. Catherine had brought light back into his dark world. She reached the altar and took his hands in hers. They were soft and warm. The priest smiled at them and began to speak. "Dear friends and family, we are gathered here today to join John and Catherine in holy matrimony." Just then, there was a loud bang as the church doors flew open. Everyone turned to look. John's heart nearly stopped when he saw who it was. Michael stood there, breathing hard like he had been running. His shirt was untucked, his face red. He looked wild and desperate. "Stop," Michael shouted. His voice echoed through the silent church. "This wedding can't happen." Catherine's hands tightened around John's. The priest stopped talking, confused. The guests began to whisper. "Michael, what are you doing?" John hissed, embarrassment and anger washing over him. Michael started walking down the aisle toward them. In his hand, he held some papers and his phone. "Dad, I'm sorry," Michael said, his voice shaking, "but you can't marry her. She's not who you think she is." Catherine's face had gone very pale. Her smile disappeared. For just a second, John saw something in her eyes he had never seen before. Fear. "What are you talking about?" John asked, but deep inside, a small voice was telling him to listen to his son. Michael stopped in front of them, looking straight at Catherine. "Would you like to tell him who you really are, or should I?" The church went completely quiet. Everyone stared at Michael, Catherine, and John. Catherine let go of John's hands. Her face changed. The sweet smile was gone. Her eyes looked cold now. "Michael, you're ruining your father's special day," she said with a hard voice that John had never heard before. "Whatever lies you've made up, we can talk about them later." Michael shook his head. No more lies, no more later. He turned to his father. "Dad, this woman is not Catherine Wilson from Chicago. Her real name is Elizabeth Conway." Whispers spread through the church. People leaned toward each other, covering their mouths as they talked. John felt dizzy. This couldn't be happening. "What are you talking about?" John asked, his voice weak and shaky. Michael held up his phone. "3 weeks ago, I hired a private detective. Something about her story didn't feel right." He turned the screen toward John. "Look at these pictures, Dad." On the screen was a photo of Catherine, or Elizabeth, with different hair. She was standing next to an old man, both wearing wedding clothes. The date on the photo was just 2 years ago. "This is Robert Miller from Florida," Michael explained. "He was 68 years old, a rich business owner. He married Elizabeth 2 years ago. 6 months later, his bank accounts were empty and she was gone." Catherine's face was now hard as stone. "This is crazy," she said, but her voice wasn't sure anymore. Michael switched to another photo. Same woman, now with red hair, at another wedding with a different old man. "James Thompson, age 71. From Texas," Michael said. "Same story. Marriage, emptied accounts, disappeared." John felt like the floor was moving under his feet. He looked at Catherine, searching her face for the woman he thought he knew. "Is this true?" he asked. Before she could answer, Michael pulled out a piece of paper from his pocket. "I have police reports here. Elizabeth Conway is wanted in 3 states for fraud and theft. She finds wealthy widowers, marries them, takes their money, and runs." Catherine suddenly grabbed her long dress and turned to run. But 2 men in the back of the church stood up. They were police officers in plain clothes, friends of Michael. They blocked the door. "You called the police?" John asked his son, feeling both angry and grateful at the same time. Michael nodded. "I'm sorry, Dad. I had to protect you." Catherine looked around wildly, like a trapped animal. Finally, she stopped and let her shoulders drop. When she spoke again, her voice was completely different, harder, with a slight accent John had never noticed before. "Fine. You got me." She looked at John with cold eyes. It was almost too easy. Poor lonely old man, so desperate for love. "All I had to do was laugh at your boring jokes and act interested in your dull stories." John felt each word like a slap. The church was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was watching this horrible scene unfold. The police officers walked down the aisle. One of them took out handcuffs. "Elizabeth Conway, you're under arrest for fraud and identity theft." As they put the handcuffs on her, she looked at John one last time. "You know what's funny? You were going to be the easiest one yet. You changed your will so fast, putting everything in my name." She laughed, a cruel sound that echoed in the silent church. 2 more weeks and I would have been gone with everything you own." John's legs felt weak. He sat down heavily on the steps of the altar as the police led Catherine, Elizabeth, away. The guests started talking all at once. Some people came up to John, trying to comfort him, but he barely heard them. Michael sat down next to his father. He didn't say anything. He just put his hand on John's shoulder. "How did you know?" John finally asked, his voice barely a whisper. Michael sighed. "When you told me you changed your will after knowing her for only 6 months, something felt wrong. I started looking into her background. Nothing checked out. The charity she claimed to work for had never heard of her. The college she said she went to had no record of her." John closed his eyes. "I was such a fool." "You weren't a fool, Dad," Michael said gently. "You were just lonely." She knew exactly how to take advantage of that. The church was slowly emptying as people left in shocked small groups. The wedding that wasn't, the bride who was a criminal. It would be the talk of the town for months. "What do I do now?" John asked, more to himself than to his son. Michael helped his father stand up. "First, we go home. Then we figure it out, one day at a time." The drive home from the church was quiet. John stared out the window of Michael's car, watching trees and houses pass by. His mind kept replaying everything. Meeting Catherine, falling in love, planning their future together. Had it all been fake? Every smile, every kiss, every "I love you." Michael parked in front of John's big house, the house that would have been half empty by now if Michael hadn't stopped the wedding. John looked at the front door where just this morning Catherine had left with her friends to get ready for the wedding. Her things were still inside. Her clothes, her books, her smell. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Michael asked. John nodded. He didn't trust his voice right now. Inside, the house felt different. John could see Catherine's touches everywhere. The new curtains she had picked, the paintings she had hung on the walls, all part of her act. "I'll make some coffee," Michael said, heading to the kitchen. John sat heavily on the couch, feeling like an old man for the first time in his life. Michael returned with 2 cups of coffee. "The police will need to come by later. They'll want to take her things as evidence." John took a sip of his coffee. It was too hot and burned his tongue. But he barely noticed. How did I not see it? All those red flags. What red flags? Michael asked, sitting across from his father. John sighed. She never wanted to talk about her past. When I asked about her family, she changed the subject. She said her parents were dead, and she was an only child. Perfect story. No one to check with. Michael nodded. She picked her targets carefully. John winced at the word targets. Is that all he had been? A target? How did you figure it out? John asked. Really? Michael set down his coffee cup. It started when you told me you were changing your will. It seemed too fast. Then when I met her at dinner last month, something felt off. She knew too much about your business, your money. She kept asking about your investments. John remembered that dinner. He had thought Catherine was just being interested in his life. I hired a private detective, Michael continued. He started digging. Her story about working for that Chicago charity for 10 years. The charity exists, but no one named Catherine Wilson ever worked there. Her college degree. The university had no record of her. John closed his eyes. And I never checked any of it. The detective found news articles about similar cases in Florida and Texas. When we saw her pictures from those weddings, even with different hair, it was clearly her. Then we contacted the police. The doorbell rang, making both men jump. Michael went to answer it. 2 police officers stood there, along with a woman in plain clothes who introduced herself as Detective Garcia. Mr. Parker, she said to John, I know this is a difficult time, but we need to ask you some questions and collect evidence from your home. For the next 2 hours, John answered questions and watched as officers took Catherine's, Elizabeth's, things, her laptop, her phone, her papers. They took pictures of documents she had asked John to sign. The detective showed John more photos of Elizabeth's previous victims. How many men has she done this to? John asked, feeling sick. That we know of. 5, Detective Garcia said, but we suspect there are more. After the police left, John felt empty. He stood in the bedroom, looking at the closet half filled with her clothes. The bathroom still had her makeup and perfumes the police didn't need. I can help you pack up her stuff, Michael offered. We can give it to charity. John nodded. Tomorrow, maybe. I don't have the energy right now. Michael checked his watch. I should call Sarah and the kids, let them know what happened. Go home to your family, John said. I'll be fine. Michael frowned. I'm not leaving you alone tonight, Dad. I'll sleep in the guest room. John wanted to argue but didn't have the strength. Thank you, he said instead. As evening fell, John sat on his back porch with a glass of whiskey. The sunset was beautiful, painting the sky orange and pink. Catherine, Elizabeth, had planned to have their wedding reception out here. Tables with white tablecloths, flowers, music, dancing. All canceled now. John took a sip of his whiskey and tried to understand how his life had changed so completely in just one day. This morning, he was a happy man about to start a new chapter. Now, he was just an old fool who had nearly lost everything to a lie. The next week was the hardest John had ever lived through, harder even than when Mary died. With Mary, at least his memories were real. With Catherine, Elizabeth, every memory was now poison. Every happy moment was a lie. News about the wedding spread fast in their small town. John couldn't go anywhere without people staring or whispering. The local newspaper even ran a story about it. Wedding scam stopped by quick-thinking son. John stopped reading the paper after that. Michael stayed with John for 3 days, helping him pack up Elizabeth's things. They worked mostly in silence, putting her clothes in boxes for charity. John found himself looking at each item, wondering if she had bought it with money stolen from other men. "You should come stay with us for a while," Michael said on the 3rd day. "Sarah and the kids would love to have you." John shook his head. "I need to face this, son. I can't hide." Michael didn't push. Instead, he made sure the kitchen was stocked with food before he left. "Call me anytime, day or night," he said as he hugged his father goodbye. Alone in the big house, John felt lost. He had taken time off work. He couldn't face his employees yet. He spent days sitting in his chair, watching TV without really seeing it. At night, he couldn't sleep in the bedroom he had shared with Elizabeth, so he slept on the couch instead. The police called, often with updates. Elizabeth was in jail waiting for trial. They had found bank accounts with money from her other victims. More men had come forward after seeing her picture in the news. One morning, about 2 weeks after the wedding that wasn't, John woke up on the couch with a stiff neck and made a decision. This had to stop. He couldn't live like this anymore. He showered, shaved, and put on clean clothes for the first time in days. He stripped the sheets from the bed and threw them in the wash. He opened all the windows to let fresh air blow through the house. Then he called Michael. "I'd like to come for dinner tonight, if the offer still stands," he said. "Of course." Michael sounded relieved. "Sarah's making lasagna. The kids will be so happy to see their grandpa." That evening, John drove to Michael and Sarah's house. It was a small but cozy home in a neighborhood filled with young families. As he parked, the front door flew open and his grandchildren, Emma, age 6, and Jack, age 4, ran out. "Grandpa! Grandpa!" they shouted, running to his car. John felt something warm in his chest for the first time in weeks. He got out and knelt down for hugs, almost knocked over by their excitement. Sarah stood in the doorway, smiling. She was a kind woman with curly brown hair and warm eyes. "It's good to see you, John," she said, giving him a gentle hug when he reached the door. Inside, the house was noisy and warm. The kids showed John their toys and drawings. The smell of lasagna filled the air. Michael poured his father a glass of wine. During dinner, Emma looked at John with serious eyes. "Daddy said you were sad because a bad lady tried to steal your money." John almost choked on his food. He looked at Michael, who shrugged apologetically. "Yes, that's sort of what happened," John said, not sure how to explain to a 6-year-old. Emma nodded. "When Becky took my doll at school, I was sad too. But then I made new friends who weren't mean." Out of the mouths of babes, John thought. He smiled at his granddaughter. "That's very smart, Emma." After dinner, while Sarah put the kids to bed, John and Michael sat on the back porch with their wine. "Detective Garcia called me yesterday," Michael said. "They found evidence that Elizabeth was already planning her next victim. A widower in Arizona. She had emails from him on her computer." John shook his head. "She would have moved on to him right after taking everything from me." They sat in silence for a moment. Then John said, "Thank you, Michael, not just for stopping the wedding. For everything after, too. I'm sorry I didn't listen to you sooner." Michael put his hand on his father's shoulder. "You're my dad. I wasn't going to let anyone hurt you." For the first time since the wedding day, John felt a small spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he would be okay. A month passed. The leaves on the trees started to change colors. John slowly found a new normal. He went back to work, running his construction business. At first, people gave him strange looks or suddenly stopped talking when he walked into a room. But soon, the story of his almost wedding became old news, and life moved on. One Tuesday morning, John's phone rang. It was Detective Garcia. "Mr. Parker, I wanted to let you know that Elizabeth Conway has accepted a plea deal. She'll serve 8 years in prison for fraud and identity theft." John sat down at his desk. "So there won't be a trial?" "No trial," the detective confirmed, "which means you won't have to testify or see her again." After hanging up, John felt like a heavy weight had lifted from his shoulders. No trial meant no more public shame, no facing Elizabeth in court, no having to tell his story again and again. He called Michael with the news. "That's great, Dad," Michael said. "Now you can really move forward." "I've been thinking," John said. "I want to sell the house." There was a pause on the line. "Are you sure? You and Mom lived there for 30 years. "I'm sure," John said firmly. "Too many bad memories now mixed with the good ones. I need a fresh start." That weekend, Michael came over to help John start packing. They began in the attic, sorting through boxes of old things. John found Mary's wedding dress, carefully stored in a special box. He opened it and touched the soft white fabric. "I miss her," he said quietly. Michael nodded. "Me too." As they worked, they found boxes of Michael's old toys and school projects. They found photo albums filled with pictures of family vacations and birthday parties. "Look at this one," Michael laughed, holding up a photo of himself as a teenager with spiky hair and baggy clothes. "What was I thinking?" John smiled. "You were quite the rebel." They ordered pizza for lunch and ate it sitting on boxes in the living room. John realized he was enjoying himself. For the first time in months, he felt relaxed and happy. "You know what's strange?" he said to Michael. "If it hadn't been for Elizabeth, we might not be here like this." Michael looked confused. "What do you mean?" "We were growing apart before all this happened," John explained. "I was so busy with work, and then with Catherine. Elizabeth, you were busy with your family. We barely saw each other." Michael thought about this. "You're right. It took a crisis to bring us back together. Sometimes good things come from bad situations," John said. The next day, John met with a real estate agent. She walked through his house, making notes about what needed to be fixed or updated before selling. "The market is good right now," she told him. "I think we can get a very good price, especially in this neighborhood." John signed the papers to list his house for sale. As the agent left, he felt both sad and excited. This house had been his home for so long, the place where he had raised Michael, where he had lived with Mary. But it was also the place where Elizabeth had tricked him and almost stolen his life savings. It was time for something new. That evening, John drove around town looking at different neighborhoods. He thought maybe a small condo would be nice, something easy to take care of, with no yard work. Or maybe an apartment in the new building downtown, close to restaurants and shops. For the first time since the wedding day, John felt excited about the future. He wasn't just surviving anymore, he was planning, moving forward. When he got home, he sat on his back porch with a cup of coffee. The sun was setting, painting the sky with bright colors. John watched as the light faded and stars began to appear. "I'm going to be okay," he said out loud to himself. And for the first time, he truly believed it. 3 months later, John moved into his new place. It was a small but nice condo near the park. It had 2 bedrooms, one for him and one for when his grandchildren came to visit. Large windows let in plenty of light, and a small balcony gave him a place to sit outside with his morning coffee. Moving day was busy. Michael and his friend Tom helped John carry furniture in boxes. Sarah brought lunch for everyone. The grandchildren helped by unpacking books and putting them on shelves in no particular order. By evening, most of the boxes were unpacked. The kids had gone home with Sarah, and Michael and Tom were putting together John's new bed. "I think that's the last piece," Tom said, tightening the final screw. "Thanks for all your help today," John told them, handing each man a cold beer from his new refrigerator. They sat in the living room, tired but satisfied with the day's work. John looked around at his new home. Nothing here reminded him of Elizabeth. Everything was fresh and new. He had even bought new furniture, donating most of his old things to charity. "To new beginnings," John said, raising his beer bottle. "To new beginnings," Michael and Tom echoed. After they left, John took a shower in his new bathroom. He put on fresh pajamas and slept in his new bed. For the first time in months, he slept through the whole night without bad dreams. The next morning, John woke up feeling rested and happy. He made coffee and took it out to his small balcony. The view wasn't as nice as his old backyard, but it was his, and it felt good. John spent the next few weeks settling into his new life. He joined a gym close to his condo. He started walking in the park every evening. He found a coffee shop he liked, where he would read the newspaper on Sunday mornings. One Sunday, about a month after moving in, John was at his usual table in the coffee shop. He was reading about a local art show when someone spoke to him. "Excuse me, is this seat taken?" John looked up to see a woman with short gray hair and friendly eyes. She was about his age, maybe a bit younger, holding a cup of tea and a book. "No, please, sit down," John said, moving his newspaper to make room. "Thank you." "It's so busy today," she said, sitting across from him. "I'm Nancy, by the way." "John," he replied, suddenly feeling shy. He hadn't really talked to a woman since Elizabeth. Nancy opened her book, a mystery novel. John noticed it was the same one he had read last month. "That's a good book," he said. "The ending really surprised me." Nancy quickly put her hand over her ears. "No spoilers, please. I'm only halfway through." John laughed. "Sorry, I wouldn't dream of it." They talked about books for a while. Nancy was a retired teacher who loved to read. She had moved to town last year to be closer to her daughter and grandchildren. "My son and his family live here too," John said. "My grandkids are 6 and 4. "Mine are 7 and 3, Nancy said with a smile. "They keep me young and tired at the same time." John found himself laughing again. It felt good. When Nancy finished her tea, she stood up to leave. "It was nice talking with you, John. I'm here most Sunday mornings, if you ever want to discuss books again." After she left, John sat thinking. Nancy seemed nice, normal, real. Not at all like Elizabeth with her fake smiles and hidden plans. Just a regular woman enjoying her retirement, loving her family, reading books. John wasn't ready to date again. The wound from Elizabeth's betrayal was still healing. But maybe he was ready for a friend. Someone to talk to about books and grandchildren. Someone with honest eyes and a kind smile. For the first time since his almost wedding, John allowed himself to think that maybe, someday, he might trust again. Over the next few months, John settled into a comfortable routine. He went to work during the week. On Wednesdays, he had dinner with Michael and his family. On Sundays, he went to the coffee shop, where he often saw Nancy. Their friendship grew slowly. They started sitting together every Sunday, talking about books, their grandchildren, and life in general. John learned that Nancy had been a high school English teacher for 30 years. Her husband had died of a heart attack 8 years ago. Like John, she had struggled with loneliness. "After Tom died, I thought that was it for me," Nancy told him one day. "I'd had my one great love. I didn't expect to ever feel happy again." John nodded. "I felt the same way after Mary died." And then he stopped, not sure if he wanted to tell Nancy about Elizabeth. Nancy looked at him with kind eyes. And then John took a deep breath. "And then I met someone who seemed perfect. We got engaged very quickly. But on our wedding day, My son showed up with evidence that she was a con artist who had done this before to other men. Nancy's eyes went wide. Oh my goodness, that sounds like something from a movie. It felt like a bad dream, John admitted. She was arrested right there in the church. It turned out she was just after my money. Nancy reached across the table and touched his hand. I'm so sorry that happened to you. That must have been terrible. John was surprised to find that talking about it didn't hurt as much as it used to. It was, but in some ways, it was also a wake-up call. It brought me and my son closer together. It helped me realize I needed a change. Still, what a horrible thing to go through, Nancy said. They were quiet for a moment. Then Nancy smiled. Well, you don't have to worry about me being a con artist. I live on a teacher's pension. If anything, you're the one with money. John laughed. It felt good to laugh about something that had once caused him so much pain. The next weekend, instead of meeting at the coffee shop, John invited Nancy to join him for a walk in the park. It was a beautiful fall day. The leaves were red and gold, and the air was cool and fresh. As they walked, Nancy told John stories about her years of teaching. Teenagers can be challenging, but I loved it, she said. Seeing a student suddenly understand something difficult, that's the best feeling in the world. John enjoyed listening to her talk about her work with such passion. Elizabeth had never talked about her work because it was all lies. Nancy was real. What you saw was what you got. After their walk, John felt brave enough to ask, "Would you like to have dinner with me next Friday? There's a nice Italian restaurant downtown." Nancy looked surprised, then pleased. "I'd like that very much, John." For the next few days, John felt nervous and excited, like a teenager before a first date. He tried on different shirts, not sure what to wear. He made a reservation at the restaurant, asking for a nice table by the window. On Friday evening, he picked Nancy up at her apartment. She looked lovely in a blue dress, her silver hair neatly styled. "You look beautiful," John said, suddenly shy. "Thank you," Nancy replied with a smile. "You look very handsome yourself." At the restaurant, they talked over pasta and wine. John told Nancy about his construction business. Nancy showed John pictures of her grandchildren on her phone. "My grandson Jake is learning to play soccer," she said proudly. "He's not very good yet, but he tries so hard." John found himself relaxing. This was nothing like his whirlwind romance with Elizabeth. This was calm, comfortable, and honest. There were no red flags, no warning signs, just two people enjoying each other's company. As John drove Nancy home, he realized something important. He was happy. Not the wild, too-good-to-be-true happiness he had felt with Elizabeth, but a quiet, steady happiness that felt real and lasting. "I had a wonderful time," Nancy said as they reached her door. "So did I," John replied. And he meant it. 6 months passed. John and Nancy saw each other more and more often. They went to movies, took walks in the park, and had dinner together at least once a week. They met each other's families. Nancy's daughter Lisa and her husband liked John right away. Michael and Sarah welcomed Nancy into their home as if she had always been part of their lives. One Sunday, they took all the grandchildren to the zoo. It was a noisy, busy day filled with ice cream, animal sightings, and tired feet. By the end, the adults were as exhausted as the children. "Grandpa, can Nancy come to my birthday party next month?" Emma asked as they were leaving. "She tells the best stories." John looked at Nancy, who smiled. "I'd love to come, if that's okay with your grandpa," she said. "Of course it's okay," John said, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. That evening, after dropping Nancy off at her apartment, John drove home thinking about how much his life had changed. A year ago, he had been engaged to Elizabeth, thinking he had found happiness again. 6 months ago, he had been broken and afraid to trust anyone. Now he was building something new with Nancy, something real and good. The next day, Detective Garcia called. It had been months since John had heard from her. "Mr. Parker, I wanted to let you know that we've recovered most of your money, she said. The funds that Elizabeth Conway transferred from your accounts have been traced and will be returned to you. John was surprised. He had given up hope of ever seeing that money again. That's wonderful news. Thank you. There's something else, Detective Garcia continued. Conway is being transferred to a prison in Texas to face charges there. Before she left, she asked if she could write you a letter. We've checked it. There's nothing concerning in it. It's up to you if you want to read it. John's hand tightened on the phone. A letter from Elizabeth. What could she possibly have to say to him? You can send it, he said finally. I'll decide if I want to read it when it arrives. 3 days later, an envelope came in the mail. John recognized the official stamps from the state prison. He put it on his kitchen counter and stared at it for a long time. Then he called Nancy. Can you come over? There's something I need to talk about. When Nancy arrived, John showed her the letter. It's from Elizabeth. I'm not sure if I should read it. Nancy sat at the kitchen table. What do you think she wants to say? I don't know. Maybe she wants to say sorry. Or maybe she wants to hurt me more. I don't know if I'm ready to find out. Nancy took his hand. Whatever you decide, I'm here. John looked at the envelope again. I think I need to read it. If I don't, I'll always wonder. He opened the letter carefully and began to read. Nancy watched his face, ready to support him if the letter upset him. To John, by the time you read this, I will be in Texas, probably for many years to come. I wanted to tell you something. You weren't like the others. At first, yes, you were just another target. But something changed. I started to care for you, in my own way. I don't expect you to believe me. I wouldn't, in your place. I'm not asking for forgiveness. What I did was wrong, and I'm paying for it now. I just wanted you to know that not everything was a lie. Some moments were real, at least for me. I hope you find happiness again. You deserve it. Elizabeth. John folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. He felt strange. Not angry, not sad, just peaceful. Are you okay? Nancy asked gently. John nodded. Yes, I think I am. He took her hand. She said she hopes I find happiness again. Nancy squeezed his hand. And have you? John looked at Nancy's kind face, thinking of all the honest, simple moments they had shared over the past months. Yes, he said. I believe I have. 1 year had passed since the day of John's failed wedding. It was hard to believe so much could change in a year. John sat on a bench in the park, watching children play on the swings and slides. He checked his watch. Michael would be arriving soon with Emma and Jack. Today was a special day. John had planned it carefully. He had asked Michael to bring the children to the park, but he hadn't told them why. Nancy would be arriving soon too. She thought they were just having a normal picnic. John touched the small box in his pocket. Inside was a simple silver ring with a small blue stone. Nothing fancy or expensive. Nothing like the large diamond he had given Elizabeth. This ring was honest and real, just like his feelings for Nancy. He saw Michael's car pull into the parking lot. Emma and Jack jumped out and ran toward him. Grandpa, we brought cookies, Emma called, holding up a plastic container. John hugged his grandchildren. Thank you. That's perfect for our picnic. Michael walked up more slowly, carrying a cooler. Where's Nancy? He asked, looking around. She'll be here soon, John said. His voice sounded shaky, even to himself. Michael studied his father's face. Are you nervous? John nodded. A little. Michael smiled and put his hand on John's shoulder. She'll say yes, Dad. I'm sure of it. A few minutes later, Nancy arrived. She wore a pretty summer dress and a wide-brimmed hat to protect her from the sun. The children ran to her, hugging her legs. Did you bring any books today? Jack asked her. Nancy always had stories to tell. Not today, but I promised to tell you a special story after our picnic, Nancy said, smiling at John. They spread a blanket on the grass and unpacked their lunch. The day was perfect, sunny but not too hot. The children ate quickly and then asked if they could play on the swings. "Go ahead," Michael told them, "but stay where we can see you." As the children ran off, Michael winked at his father. "I think I'll go push them on the swings. Give you two some time to talk." When Michael left, John and Nancy sat together on the blanket. Nancy looked happy and relaxed, with no idea what John was planning. "It's a beautiful day," she said, looking up at the blue sky. "Yes, it is," John agreed. His heart was beating fast now. "Nancy, there's something I want to ask you." Nancy turned to him, her eyes curious. "What is it, John?" John took a deep breath. "A year ago today, I was standing at the altar, about to make the biggest mistake of my life. I thought I knew what love was, but I was wrong." Nancy's expression softened. She took his hand. "Then I met you," John continued, "and you showed me what real love is. It's not fast or flashy. It's quiet conversations over coffee. It's walking in the park on Sunday afternoons. It's being there for each other, even when things are hard." John reached into his pocket and took out the small box. Nancy's eyes went wide. "I'm not rushing this time," John said. "We've known each other for almost a year. We've met each other's families. We've shared our stories, our hopes, and our fears." He opened the box, showing her the silver ring with its blue stone. "Nancy, will you marry me?" Tears filled Nancy's eyes. She looked at the simple ring, then at John's hopeful face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I will marry you." John's hand shook as he slipped the ring onto her finger. From the playground, he heard cheering. Michael and the children were watching. They must have seen what happened. Emma and Jack ran back to the blanket, followed by Michael. "Are you going to be our new grandma?" Emma asked Nancy. Nancy laughed, wiping happy tears from her eyes. "Yes, I guess I am." Michael hugged his father. "Congratulations, Dad," he said. "You deserve this happiness." As John looked around at his family, his son, his grandchildren, and now Nancy, he felt truly blessed. Life had given him a second chance at happiness, but not in the way he had expected. Sometimes the worst moments in life could lead to the best ones. If Elizabeth hadn't tried to trick him, he might never have rebuilt his relationship with Michael. He might never have moved to his new home or met Nancy. John put his arm around Nancy's shoulders and held her close. This time, he was getting it right.